Hey there, everybody. Welcome. I am Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and thanks for joining me here on the 97th episode of the weekly Ratchet. In this episode, folks, we're going to have to talk about some stuff. Board game stuff. That is remarkably heavy. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly Ratchet. As always, I hope you have had a fantastic time getting to play some games with family and or friends. If you're in America, you may have gotten to enjoy a long weekend. I kind of did. I did work a little bit yesterday, but it was actually, it's sad to say this, but it was nice to have a work day with no meetings or interruptions. I could just focus on getting some stuff done. Anyways, I digress. Back to the weekly Ratchet after a little bit of a hiatus, this time a bit unintentional, well, frankly, as was the last one. After my last somewhat solemn episode, that episode came out on like a Tuesday. I didn't want to rush the next episode by the weekend so folks could get in answers to question of the week and such. But I did end up going out of town on Sunday on another business trip down to Charlotte. I was actually supposed to go the week prior. Things with my mother kind of threw that all into a spin. But they did go down to Charlotte. Got to spend a couple of days with my dad also, which was pretty nice. And so anyways, I am now back. Of course, I came back this past Saturday, turned around Sunday, went out of town again with my family. We went up to Washington, D.C., do a little sightseeing, and I decided to celebrate my birthday a little early this year with something that I'm kind of calling the Festival of Food. Trying out some favorite restaurants, doing a little bit of traveling to get to some places that I really like to go and enjoy. We went, took my daughter to a sushi revolving conveyor belt bar on Sunday up there in DC. She had a blast doing that. And then also took my wife and daughter to a place called the Yard House. It's a chain restaurant, but their jambalaya is my favorite. Anyways, real quick before I get into the show, I just want to thank everyone very sincerely from the bottom of my heart for all the kind condolences and kind words following the passing of my mother. Yeah, it's been a weird couple of weeks for sure, but I really appreciate everyone's support. That's kind of one of the reasons why I talked about it on this channel, because I knew that I would get some encouragement from the people that I respect and admire, and so I really want to thank you. I did get this. It's not a great image. I'll put an image up here on the screen. My first ever tattoo. Ohana, of course, the Hawaiian word for family. Hawaii being where mom passed away, for those who may not have caught it. The rainbow, I think I posted this image when we came out of the hospital immediately after my mother's passing. This was waiting outside for us. Our mother was waiting outside for us. And then the daisy in that image, in this tattoo, was actually drawn by my mother last year for something my wife wanted to do. Ended up not using it. And so I incorporated the image. Anyways, just wanted to thank you guys again. I'm not going to belabor that subject this episode. We're all doing okay. Even Dad's doing pretty well. It was a little bit weird being in that apartment without Mom there, but we're all kind of hanging in there. It's just going to be a year we're all kind of going to be anxious to be over with, but it is what it is. Anyways, let's get to some games. So I did get to play just a couple of games while there in Honolulu. My sister Jennifer was there. She is a fairly avid gamer. Of course, my brother plays actually just a ton of Everdell. I'll talk about that maybe in a little bit. Both of my sisters were there. They're about 11 years younger than me. My brother is 5 years younger than me. I don't actually know how old his wife is, but I think they're about the same age. So anyways, we first sat down and played my copy of American Body Shop, which is sort of my rendition of the American Bookshop game. This, for reminders, is a trick-taking game, but it doesn't have the trump suit. It doesn't have a spades or hearts or anything like that that sort of beats all the other suits. Instead, there is a total value that you're trying to get to in the card values on the table. And if at any point that value is reached or exceeded, then whoever played that last card takes all the cards on the table, regardless of whether or not the round ended. So everyone might not get an equal number of turns to play. Residual cards at the end of the round, when at least one player runs out of cards, you can actually choose to keep them or get rid of them. And that's because the scoring on this game is also quite wonky. Basically, every one of the cards that you have at the end of the round is -1 point, unless you have the majority of cards of a particular suit, in which case those cards are worth 1 point to you instead. And it is a clear majority. Ties are considered to not have the majority. We played one round of this with both my sisters, my brother and his wife. My sisters immediately tapped out on this. They could not get their heads around the scoring or the gameplay, which, I mean, I will agree it's kind of funky. I was kind of surprised that Jennifer tapped out as quickly as she did. But regardless. However, my brother and Amanda, his wife, were hooked. I'm sure that my brother, being a naval officer, has whiled away many an hour playing trick-taking games. So he kind of got the systems of it, although he still sort of grappled with what really is the right mechanism to play, which I agree, sort of the right strategies. I hadn't figured that out myself either. His wife, however, really didn't know what was going on. I mean, she had the basic idea, but she had no concept of what should I play, what shouldn't I play, what's the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. And yet she kicked the crap out of us in this game. I think my brother and I both had either negative score or very, very, very low points, like 5 or less points each at the end of the game, which is 1 round per player. Amanda had like 20 points or 30 points. It was absurd how many points she had. And I just could not believe, I don't know if it was just lousy shuffling or what happened, but they had a blast with it. And I was really glad to get to check that out with some new players. We also did play a quick round of I Made You a Mixtape. I've talked about this a bunch on the channel. I do still think, now this is an I split, you choose game. You get 3 cards, you keep 2, you pass the other one back to the player who gave it to you. And when you first get the 3, you sort of split them into a group of 2, a group of 1. You pass them to the player on your left. I kind of left that part out there for a second. But the idea is that you're trying to maintain the balance of this cassette, of a mixtape that you're making, sort of equal number of just value of cards on each side. You have to maintain the flow using this little ribbon artwork down the cards. And then there's a simple set collection mechanism that scores at the end of the game as well. And my philosophy has always been, I look to the player to my left, you always pass the cards to your left, and I see where their balance is. And I try to organize the 3 cards so that one card will help them improve their balance, and the other 2 will either maintain it or make it worse. That's always what I try to do. Because in most cases I have seen, that is the easiest mechanism, the easiest sort of scoring attribute to keep track of and to try to address. And so most players will automatically just go for balance and not think too much about the flow or the set collection. Because that is the one score that they can see actively in front of them, is how many points they have and how many points they could have on the balance. So therefore, most of the time, I get 2 cards back. Meanwhile, the player to my right has passed me 2 groups of 1 and 2 cards, and I will try to always take the 2 cards if I can, if it doesn't mess me up too badly in terms of balance. I let the flow kind of take care of itself. I don't really worry about the flow too much. But what I'll ultimately end up with is a crap ton of cards. More cards in my tape deck than any other player, which automatically helps my set collection aspect in spades. I mean, I usually end up with a ton of points in set collection because I'm just trying to take as many cards as I possibly can. And that worked for me very well in this playthrough. I think I set my record of like 154 points. It was absurd. But everyone did have a lot of fun with this. The artwork on this is very nostalgic. The song titles are very nostalgic. And everyone had a lot of fun with it. I Made You a Mixtape. The next game I want to talk about, we actually played after I got back from Honolulu. My wife and I took a day off. Just kind of went around town here a little bit. Stopped at our local game store. And I just randomly bought this copy of Aspens. This is from Ludivore Games. It is designed by Luke Roberts and Neil Edwards. I don't recognize those names. But anyways, this is a 2-player game as it is. There is an expansion that lets you play with teams, I think up to 4, but I do not believe it has a 3-player variant. I could be wrong. But this is a really interesting, very basic, abstract, tactical game about trying to spread trees all over this forest. You'll see that there's a sort of this weird map of hexagonal spaces. There are a couple of cardinal and ordinal directions. So you've got west and east. You've got northwest, northeast, southwest, and southeast. You do not have north and south because if you think about it, with a hexagonal space, there's only 6 directions you can actually move in. So you can't play the full 8. You're going to have basically 2 players, greens and yellows. Each of your player colors kind of has a couple variants. You can have 3 different shades of green, 3 different shades of yellow, but the colors don't matter. It just kind of adds to the appearance of the game, which is quite stunning as you build this out. Basically, on your turn, you're going to roll 2 dice. The one die is going to give you a number. The other one's going to give you one of those 6 directions. D6 dice, right? Kind of all makes sense. The number is how many, or I should say, which spaces on the board of that number of trees will generate more trees. So if you roll a 3, then every space on the board with 3 or more trees on it will generate a tree for its owner. And it's kind of like Risk. You don't immediately put those pieces out in that space. You instead kind of collect them in front of you, and if it is your active turn, you get an extra tree. And that means that when you roll the die, both players are generating trees, but only the current player gets an extra tree and will get to play out all the trees they currently have sort of stored in front of them. And that's where the other die comes in. It gives you a direction. So you can always add trees to a space where you already have trees. And that, of course, increases your likelihood that you'll get to generate trees off of that space. So if you have, if you increase from 3 to 4 trees, well, then that space will generate trees on 4 or less, as opposed to just 3 or less, right? Kind of increasing your odds. You can also place a tree onto an empty space. It cannot have any of your opponent's trees on it, in either the direction that directional die faces, or the 2 spaces sort of adjacent to it, the 2 directions. So if you roll the west, you can place to the west, northwest, or southwest of any space where you currently have a tree. Again, if your opponent doesn't have that control of that space already. And that's basically it. You're expanding across this map. There is this idea that if you completely close off a section, that your opponent can no longer get into that area, then you immediately fill every space in that region with one of your trees. At the end of the game, you're supposed to, you don't really have to, but you remove every excess tree from every space. You sort of go down to 1 tree on every space, and you simply count how many spaces you control, and whoever has the most spaces wins the game. That's it. I pretty much taught you how to play. It's really, really interesting, though, because there is this sort of push and pull between, well, do I try to get a bunch of trees into a single space? It doesn't help me for control. But the more spaces I have with more trees means that number die will typically work better for me than if I have a bunch of spaces with 1 or 2 trees in it. The lowest number, by the way, is 2. So you have to have at least 2 trees in a space for that die to give you anything. And that's why even if you do close off a big space, granted, yes, okay, you're going to score a lot of points there, but you're going to fill that area with 1 tree, and that area is not going to do anything for you unless you start plopping a bunch of extra trees in that space. And so again, you're torn between expansion and sort of vertical growth, if that makes any sense. First time we played this, my wife and I, at our local speakeasy, I managed to sort of quickly start expanding. I thought, I'm going to try and just close off areas very quickly, fill a large grove with trees, and starve her out. Didn't work. It didn't work at all. She ended up with a bunch of spaces with like 4 trees or even more. And so we would roll, even 2s, we'd roll a 2. And she would get 15 trees and I would get like 9. And I was like, well, this isn't sustainable. I'm going to just lose my rear end here. And I did. She, in fact, with a really crucial wind direction, she closed off a huge swath of the map, almost a quarter of the entire map. And I kind of looked at her and I said, look, I'm just going to throw in the towel. You win. Because by the time you cover that with all those trees, there's no way that I can come back with what little space was left open on the map. So we did reset. We played again. And I did try and go the other direction. I tried to focus more on sort of splitting my effort. Okay, a little bit of expansion, especially if I'm trying to sort of block her to keep her from blocking me. But then I would also try and stack up trees as best as I could. And so the exact opposite happened. We'd roll a 2. I'd get 12, 15 trees. She'd get 7. And eventually, same thing. I think I wiped off the entire west side of the map in one shot. We did finish up the game, but then we just ran out of trees. We couldn't place anything else. And I won that one by, I think, maybe 20 points overall. This is kind of neat. I think I mentioned that there is an expansion that lets you play teams. Yeah, I did mention that. I don't think I'm going to bother getting that, although I do like the idea of having some different player colors. But this was just it's a very, very quick game, plays in maybe 20, 30 minutes. It is very easy to learn. I literally have taught you how to play. And it's one of those things where you'll really kind of sit there and mull over your options sometimes. And it's not always obvious what you should do, even out of just the two choices that you have. So I'm glad I got to check this one out. And it also doesn't take up a massive footprint. Very, very pretty on the table. Aspens. That's it for some games at the start of the show. Let's get to question of the week. All right, well, in honor and memory of my mother, I asked you in the last episode to tell me about playing games with your folks, with your parents, your family, and if you never really got to, what would you like to play with them if you could? Lancelot opened the discussion by saying that he rarely plays games with his parents, mostly aiming for family weight stuff. He said he'd like to up the complexity a little at some point. I can appreciate that, certainly. I've often played kind of lightweight party stuff with my folks, but I would maybe just suggest that getting to play anything is better than not having that experience. I've never really cared much for the game of Green Team Wins. I played it only one time with my parents and a couple of my siblings, and we laughed so much. We had so much fun that I'm glad I just got to play something with them that brought us all that much joy. Just a suggestion, of course. Take it as you wish. Penny said her and her husband frequently play games with her 81-year-old mother. She said it amazes her how much her mom loves gaming, as they never played when she was younger. Isn't that kind of neat? That's a really cool story, to sort of find something after all that time that you can sort of connect with your mother on. That's really, really neat. Just Joe Blogs mentioned recently playing Kohaku with his aunt and mother, and often ends up playing Yahtzee when visiting his father. I've not played Yahtzee in a long, long time, but same thing. If I could just play something with my dad, that'd be cool. He used to do a lot of gaming when he was younger, but the very opposite of what Penny had said. He really has no interest in it now. Agant83 used to play Rummy with his folks, but hasn't in some time. He'd said he'd aim to play something with them in the near future. I would definitely say, try to make that happen. Jeremy Johnson said his mom's favorite game is Sagrada, and they play frequently. He used to play dominoes with his dad, but his Alzheimer's prevents that anymore now. Very, very sorry to hear that, and my condolences to you and your family. I have known a number of folks who have dealt with, or have family members who have dealt with Alzheimer's or dementia, and I cannot imagine what that's like on either side of the table, and I just hope to heck I never have to. But again, my heart goes out to you. Teshera lamented that his parents never had the slightest interest in board games, preferring social games like darts, bowling, billiards, and more. He said he attributes his love of gaming to his grandmother, who loved card games. Grandma sounds cool. I kind of like that, and I hope you got some time to play with her at some point. Lorelli Zoma, a first-time poster, said she grew up playing Pinochle with her family as her dad was a big fan. They also played some Avalon Hill war games when they were younger, but tend to avoid those now. Yeah, and that's the same thing. My dad used to play a bunch of like war games and almost like tabletop miniatures games before they really existed back in the day, and he doesn't do any of that stuff now. I actually kind of wish we could play that kind of stuff. He just has no interest in it. D. Evergrace grew up playing classic games with his parents like Millborn and Rummy Cub, and currently play more family weight games with his mother and brother-in-law. You talked about how that was kind of a weird story playing with her in-laws. I will only share that only once did we ever try to play a game with my in-laws, my mother and father-in-law. And in fact, my daughter, at somewhere around the age of 4 or 5, taught them to play Outfoxed, a kid's game it's not from Haba. I guess I can't remember who published that game. Very, very lightweight game, a little bit of dice rolling, a little bit of a very, very light deduction. And it was such a struggle, especially for my mother-in-law, to kind of wrap her head around. What do you mean you can just go anywhere? I'm used to following a path. And it was just really kind of funny. Wonderflonium said that he played Scattergories a lot as a kid, always good for lots of laughs. And Greg of the Meeple Society played a lot of canasta and bridge with his parents and still plays games of apples to apples or Quirkle with his dad since his own mother passed in 2018. It's almost kind of weird hearing about the classical stuff because I never played that stuff when I was a kid. Never played any of those card games with my parents, at least. I did the hearts and spades and all that kind of stuff in high school, but that was it. We had a stack of board games when I was younger, but I'd only ever play them with my brother, or we would just goof off with the components. Mark Bennion said that his dad was always an active gamer, even getting into role-playing games from time to time. He said a frequently played game was Kingmaker, purchased from the Isle of Man. I don't know that one, but that's really cool as well, getting to you probably just grew up then in this hobby, and I can't even imagine that. Lastly, Jeremy Brooks said his father never played many games, but they played a bunch of classic games like Payday, Risk, the original Dark Tower, and so much Trivial Pursuit that they practically memorized the answers. He said his mom is still with him and plays what she can, but struggles these days to hold a hand of cards. Still very cool that you get to play stuff with your mom, and cool to have that sort of whole backlog of games. I wonder if you've kind of been playing ever since your childhood. Did you kind of take a break at some point in there? I'm kind of curious. I got into gaming in 2015, and when my folks would come over, maybe every once in a while I'd kind of start to suggest something to play with them. But again, we did a lot of family weight stuff. We did a lot of kind of like party games or just sort of social experiment games, that kind of stuff. I think it was my sister who first tried to sit my mom and dad down to Everdell. My dad's one of those that if you can get him at the table, he will eventually get into it. But then after the game, he'll tell you all the rules that he would change to do differently to, of course, compensate for the things that he perceived as being hard. And my mom was one of those who just could never remember a rule. Just could not remember. I remember playing a game of Quacks with her. It was kind of like a late evening. I remember she was in her nightgown, and we were playing Quacks, and I had some 3D printed trays with the little reminder cards of what each token in the game did. And after half an hour of playing, she'd pick her glasses up, she'd spin the tray so she could read the card, put the glasses on so she could read the card to remember what the token did after she had been using it for like half an hour. It drove me crazy. But we played a lot of fun stuff. I talked about Green Team Wins. We would play a lot of Anomia, which was always it's one of my favorite sort of party setting games. Very, very fun to play with the family. I remember my brother and a couple of my siblings playing the game where you're pointing the foam guns at each other. I'm blanking on the name of it right now. But we are absolutely cracking up laughing playing that. And it's really fun to get to have those moments, like I said. Thanks for all your comments. I appreciate it. Good to hear all those really cool stories. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple more games. All right, so as I sort of suggested here at the start of this episode, I have a massive stack of games here. Now, I have kind of gotten away from the whole, consumeristic nature of the hobby, but I went down to Charlotte last week and I couldn't stop myself from doing a little bit of shopping. Up first, I went to a store called the Mighty Meeple, sort of the northeast corner of Charlotte. I was invited there by someone on Facebook who had a game night that they usually attend there on Tuesdays, and I was interested in going. I did go. I almost didn't because it was an hour drive from where I was working on the southwest corner of the city, but I went ahead and I went. We played a game of Cape May. I don't remember who published this game. I can't remember the designer of this game, but I have played this before. I may have talked about it once on the Ratchet. It was kind of a while ago that my wife and I played this, and I got rid of my copy fairly quick. But this is a game about sort of rebuilding Cape May, New Jersey after a fire had spread through the town. I don't exactly know what year this is set in, but I believe it's kind of maybe early to mid 1900s. I've actually been to Cape May, New Jersey, a very pretty place. But in this game, you're moving around this board and you're simply trying to build either homes or businesses. And that's basically it. But each of those types of buildings has a couple different levels you can upgrade. You've got the base building, which is just a cardboard tile in your player color. Then you upgrade to a plastic building, which of course is much less artistic, but sort of stands out on the board a little bit better. It's three-dimensional, kind of, sort of adds a little bit of a skyline effect to the game. And then you can even further upgrade them by adding a landmark, which basically just puts sort of a fence piece underneath the plastic building, and that's when it becomes worth the most points. The businesses that you produce will give you income every couple of rounds. The homes that you produce or build will give you points at the end of the game. And so that you're kind of, again, pushing and pulling between, do I try to get myself income throughout the game to help me do the things I want to do, or do I try to build the houses so I can get points to win the game? You're also going to have a couple of challenge cards that you are working on towards on your own to possibly score some extra points. They usually have a point value and then sort of like a couple of bonus points if you achieve a certain thing. The map is arranged into kind of like 4 areas. You've got gravel, you've got grass, you've got sand, and you've got dirt. And each of those areas, actually I had it slightly backwards, it's dirt and then sand, but each of those areas become more valuable as you build. So they're cheaper to build on the gravel end of things. Obviously, as you're building down towards the beach and the sand, that becomes very expensive, but then usually they'll be worth a lot more points to you. Although there is also this sort of area majority scoring at the end of the game that plays exactly opposite. The gravel areas are a lot more points to whoever has the most buildings there than the sand areas are, which all of us are kind of like, why? That doesn't make any sense. The other thing that didn't really make a ton of sense is that you actually have a sort of a character. You have a little meeple on the board, and you're moving that meeple around by playing cards. Each of these cards has a numerical value on it, and they'll move you anywhere from 1 to 7 spaces. However, the 1, the 6, and the 7 cost you money to play. So if you want to move the furthest distance across the board or make a very, very small move, you have to pay money to be able to do that. There's also, especially in the gravel areas of the board and some of the grass areas, there are one-way streets. And so you're kind of forced to take a certain path around the board. And that's just kind of odd, because especially those one-way streets, and there's this sort of weird corner at the top of the board where everything flows away for one particular intersection. And so if you're trying to move around in that gravel area, especially if you have a goal objective to do something in that gravel area, as I did, it becomes really, really hard to get around. And once you play the cards to make your movement, they sort of stay out of your hand. You have to then take an action to pick all your cards back up. You get 3 actions on a turn, so it's a third of a round gone just to pick your cards back up. And that's kind of it. There's also this weird sort of thing that feels very tacked on, where if you land on a space on the board that has a little bird icon, you're going to pull a bird out of this little cloth bag. For every set of unique birds you have at the end of the game, you're going to get some points. It feels very, very tacked on, and also all those bird spaces, or at least most of them, occur at an intersection, which means you can't build, because you can only build in spaces that are immediately adjacent to where your meeple is on the board. So if you stop at a bird space to collect the bird token, you then can't build a building, which is worth way more points than these bird tokens could even possibly be by the end of the game. I sat down to the group playing this. I thought, hey, I know this game, which means I don't have to go through a complicated teach. I know I don't like the game, but it's fine. I'm just kind of here to have fun, and I did have fun. But it was even kind of funny because the player who won the game was like, I didn't like that. I didn't care for it at all. And then we sat there and just complained about all of its weird mechanisms. But it's really, really nice to get to, just meet some folks like that, get to go to a new store. I also did do a little bit of shopping, and I found a Wandering Towers spell pack. I don't know if I have this already in my copy. I hope I don't. I also found the Magic Tower. Let's try that again. The Magic Tower expansion to Wandering Towers. I didn't even know this existed. It was just sitting on the shelf. Very wisely, the artwork closely resembles and reminds you of the base game, which is what even drew my attention to it. It adds a new magic tower, some new rules. Looks like maybe even some slightly take-thatty stuff, which is already prevalent in that game anyways. And so without even hesitation, I picked up a copy of the Magic Tower. I also picked up Rivals and Renegades. This is an expansion to the game of Ahoy, which is by Leader Games, same company that made Root. I have Ahoy. I've never played it. I've heard decent things about it, but the base game only plays at 3 or more players. This lets you play with 2. I know it's still not the most recommended way to play the game, but at least now I can play it at 2. And so I'm hoping to finally get to check out Ahoy. I also, this is almost kind of silly, but I picked up another box of the resource upgrades to the game of Eve War for New Eden. I lamented a couple, I think, videos I talked about this game, that this thing comes with 20 of each resource, but the base game has something like 50 of each resource, just in, of course, cardboard components. So one box of this, and by the way, there's about this much stuff in this box, but this will now double the amount of the deluxe components that I have, which might be enough for a 4-player game, and I'm still kind of hoping maybe at some point to even grab another one if I can. I did pay a little bit for this, but it's not often you can get these things loose, individual like this, so I did go ahead and grab one, even if it was a tremendous waste of money. I then continued to go shopping. I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to talk about it in just a second. But I did then go to a little store there in Rock Hill, South Carolina. That's where my hotel was. And I picked up, I'm trying to get to this quickly, Spectacular. This is a game about sort of working in a park. You sort of have this this watchtower idea. You're watching over animals and such in a park. I actually thought it was about preventing fires, but it says that you are preserving endangered and vulnerable animals. Your job is to configure your park to optimally care for these species, welcome new animals, feed them properly, etc. I've seen this game a lot on tables, especially at like Dice Tower East, PAX Unplugged, stuff like that. And everyone has really, really liked it. I'm not a huge dice drafting kind of a player, but I know that there is some element of dice drafting in this. But if you can see here, I got it for all of $20, brand new in shrink, and I couldn't pass that up. So hopefully I'll get to check out Spectacular. I also found at that same store, Menfear, I think is how you pronounce this. I thought that this was a Garfield game, and it is not. This is from Ludanova. Designer is, I believe, David Prito, or no, maybe Jermaine Milan. Sorry, butchered that one. Don't recognize that name, but I have a hunch I should. This game is a good year or so old, and it still goes for about $60. I got it for $30, which made me really happy. But it's set in ancient Egypt. It's all about sort of building up and sort of managing the needs of your people, almost kind of like a city building game, but without actual elements of building a city. It does look a little abstracted, but I have heard that it is a really, really neat engine building game. I'm a big fan of engine building games, and just from what I've researched about this, I think I would really like this, and getting it at a good price is definitely what made me pull the plug. Don't know when I'm going to get to check this one out, but hope I can before too long. And then, on the way home, I had to stop and swing by Atomic Empire. They're a pretty big distributor here in the U.S., and I got a couple of things from there. Up first, I grabbed the newest expansions to Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy, the Seekers and Outcasts expansion, just some new factions to play as, new ships, all kinds of stuff. Could not pass these up. I haven't played that game in a while. Probably still my favorite kind of space-based 4X game. I got Scarabra. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. This is a Garfield game. And it was described as being sort of similar in flow and in movement and strategy to the game of Legacy of You, which is my favorite Garfield game. It is a solo-only game. This is multiplayer, but it is very much a multiplayer solo experience. You're basically heads down kind of doing your own thing. It's mostly simultaneous play. And unlike Legacy of You, where you constantly have these external threats to deal with, in this game, you are your own threat. Because if you expand too quickly, if you sort of fill up your inventory too quickly, you're going to force yourself to take on a lot of just fluff. There's this idea that you sort of fill up your inventory with midden. I don't even know what that is. But if you get too much of it, you can't take more, you lose points, there's penalties, all kinds of bad things happen. It's a little bit hard to get rid of midden. If you can get rid of midden, you can actually sort of reduce the size of your inventory, and the larger your inventory is, the more negative points you're also going to get at the end of the game. So it's all about sort of managing your own growth to try and keep everything that you're doing in check. And that sounds really, really interesting to me. I also got this on a little bit of a discount, cheaper than Amazon, good enough for me, so I picked it up. And then the last game, no, 2 games. Oof. This one's a weird one. Nexum Galaxy, the Asteroids expansion. Have you heard of this game? I hadn't either, except for that I have the base game. I got it from the Dice Tower a long time ago to review. Never even opened it. I think it's still in shrink on my shelf. Just never got around to it. And I'm standing there at the store, and I was like, I don't even know there's an expansion for this. That's crazy. They only usually make expansions for games that are kind of good. So I looked it up, and it's got pretty high scores on Board Game Geek. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and grab it, as this apparently even adds like 4X elements or whatever to it. I think it adds an entire like player board that you're working with. I don't know, but it was relatively cheap. And I had the base game that I got for free, so why not check it out? At some point, I will try to do that. Nexum Galaxy. And then, this one I did not buy from the store. This one I actually ordered online. I'm embarrassed to admit that I got the new Everdell Emerlinds, or Emerlind. This is the latest of the Everdell universe. Of course, in the box was an advertisement for the next Everdell coming out, which is apparently a card drafting, very, very different style of game. This one follows a lot of the basic formula in that you're placing out workers, you're getting resources, using those resources to play out cards, to sort of build a tableau in front of you. A lot of engine building, a lot of synergies you're trying to build between your cards, etc. This one does do some unique stuff for the franchise, though, in that you have mini workers that kind of act like the grande workers in viticulture, but kind of the opposite. They're a little miniature worker that you can accompany one of your regular workers with to let you go to an occupied space, or if you play on an unoccupied space, you can use a mini worker to double the benefits that you get from that placement. There's also some spaces that the mini workers can only go to themselves. Also, all the cards for the first time basically have a front and back, in that there is no just generic card back. All the cards play on their front side, which is kind of like a basic building, but then through a number of actions, you can possibly upgrade cards, flipping them over, which gives you a better benefit. And it even sort of changes the art. The front side is kind of a zoomed in image. And as you upgrade the card, you zoom out so you can kind of see more of the surroundings. And that just sounded really, really neat to me. I also kind of like emeralds. It's my birthstone. I know that sounds ridiculous. I sort of saw this and I was like, crap, I wish I hadn't have bought Silver Frost, whatever the last one was, which I did sell, so I'm not swimming in copies of Everdell. This one sounds kind of neat. I haven't had a chance to play it yet. I kind of punched it out. I read the rules. It's a lot of the same, but with some new twists, and I am kind of interested and anxious to check this one out. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled programming. The last game I'm going to talk about that I have played is Cozy Stickerville. Now, this game has had a relatively brief but bright presence on the internet, if you will. I think the Dice Tower came out with a really favorable review of this, and it has been making the rounds. I haven't heard about it on social media channels now in a couple of weeks. I hope its fire has not already extinguished. But I do want to chat about this because it's been a really, really interesting experience. Now, real quick, it's a legacy game in the fact that you're going to be putting stickers all over this board. I'm not going to spoil any of it for you, or at least I'm going to do my absolute best not to, so don't click away from the rest of this video. This is a game that plays over 10 years. Each year is going to consist of 12 turns, regardless of the number of players. So if you're playing this with 2 players, you're going to get 6 turns each. We're playing this with 3, my wife and daughter and I, and so we get about 4 turns each per year. It is also, before I forget to mention, it's a 2-sided board. And so you're actually going to get to play the game twice. And there's basically like 2 of every sticker in the game so that you can, have more or less the same experience if you want to, playing the game a second time. There is apparently a couple of tweaks, couple of things change, and I don't know what it is. Obviously, that gets revealed to us towards the end of your first play. On your turn, you're going to simply draw one of 12 cards that pertain to the current year that you're in. So you're going to go through all the 1 cards, 2 cards, all the way up to 10. You're going to draw a card. That card may do a number of things. It may give you a quick decision to make. Hey, something happens. Do you want to do A thing, B thing, maybe C thing? You're supposed to kind of discuss it amongst everyone at the table and sort of agree on a course of action, although the active player does kind of get the final say. And they may give you resources. They may have you place another sticker on the board. Who knows what? Some of those cards simply come out into play. They don't do anything at all when they come out, but they give you some further actions that you may be able to take on that or any future turn. And that's not just for you. Basically, the common supply of cards in front of the board are for any player to trigger at any time that they would wish on their own turn. And there's a couple other variances to that as well. There may be some cards that come out to say, hey, you have an action to take, but maybe something triggers at the end of the round, at the end of the year. If you don't get rid of that card, some things may just sort of stay out there and they still trigger at the end of the round. Who knows? There's just a lot of variety there of those things that may come out. And then after you've drawn and sort of resolved that card, you're then going to get to take typically one action. And that action may, again, it may pertain to one of the cards tucked on the bottom of the board. They may let you build something. They may give you a challenge to work on. We've even kind of come across some puzzles that have been really, really interesting. Also, some of the stickers on the board, which can range from anything from people to animals to buildings, even to geographical features on the board. Some of them may have a little number next to them. You're going to refer to a small booklet that gives you page number and sort of like a line number. So it may say 23.8. So you go to page 23, you read the 8th line. And again, it may give you decisions to make. It may give you a cost. It may just kind of give you a random thing that happens. Maybe placing more stickers, maybe even removing stickers from the board or building over top of existing things. And you're sort of doing all of that for the sake of doing all of that. There is no real objective. We did at one point get some sort of hints as to things to work on, but it didn't really even necessarily, it certainly didn't tell you why. And we have only accomplished maybe one or two of those things. Even here, I think we've gotten through round 6. So we have 4 more years to go of the game. And that's probably all I really need to recount, right? Again, you're going to spend a lot of time sort of reading the book. You're going to spend a lot of time peeling stickers. You're going to spend a lot of time trying to arrange those stickers on the board. The board is kind of this sort of angled down top view. So there are these square spaces, but they're kind of more of like a diamond because, again, you're kind of looking at a sideways angle. And so each of these stickers may count as few as one of those spaces, as many as I think 7. Some of the stickers are quite big. And I'm not spoiling anything, but there is a river that you'll have to cross at some point with a bridge, and that kind of opens up the entire map to you. And that's the same on either side of the board. So again, that's not anything that's unique to our playthrough or anything. The neat thing with this game is that it is fairly quick. Your turns are fairly quick. There is kind of a lot of rummaging through booklets and rummaging through sticker booklets. We have a little paring knife that we literally keep in the box just to kind of help us align these stickers on the board. We're all kind of a little bit more OCD and trying to make sure things line up pretty well. We're not covering any artwork on the board, that kind of a thing. We don't really worry too much about it, but it can be a little fiddly in that nature. What I've been most impressed with, though, is that there appear to be a ton of sort of little mini branches. There are little things. We had something that came up very early, I think in the second round of the game, that said, hey, if this, then that. And I was like, I don't even know what this is. I don't even remember seeing what it's asking us about. So clearly we didn't do something in just the first year of the game that could have completely taken us down a different direction. And in fact, that has come up again, I think in round 6, if I remember, 5 or 6, it came up again. And I was just kind of surprised that for what looks to be such a simplistic and plays so simplistically, that there are so many little different branching options that you can take. There's kind of like story elements, things you got to kind of revisit a couple of times, and even they may have different outcomes. There is this kind of whole milestone tracker on the side of the main board. You're going to be placing out milestones, possibly upgrading them, possibly losing them, any variety of things that has really, really been interesting. The downsides being, of course, like I said, it can be a little tedious at times. Some of these stickers are about that big. The size of a eraser on a pencil. I know who uses pencils anymore. Maybe not the best reference, but it's what I've got to work with. And so it can be a little fiddly to try and get all that stuff done. And it's constantly, it's okay, open the book, peel more stickers. Okay, go to this book, read something. Put stickers on the book, put stickers on the page, put stickers on cards. I mean, you're stickering just all over the place. And it can just get a little, like, are we still on the same turn here? The other thing, of course, like I said, based on the number of players, is how many turns you're going to get. It says it plays up to 6. Understanding that at 6 players, you're going to get 2 turns in each year. So you're only going to get 24 turns throughout the entire game. And I just don't see that being fun. Usually each player's turn, they kind of get to do whatever they want after that initial card draw. So if they want to spend a resource that you were kind of hoping to spend, well then, tough luck. You're not going to be able to do that. Some of the turns are also very interesting. Some of the turns, okay, I'm going to read this thing in a book. It's going to trigger this whole story thing. I'm going to put out like 3 or 4 different stickers. Oh, that was really, really neat. Cool. And then it gets over to you and you're like, well, we don't have any wood. So I guess I'm just going to go chop down wood and we get wood tokens. And that was my turn. And so they can be a little lackluster. And so I think that especially if you're playing at higher player counts, you could have a good year or 2 of this go by where you're just like, I've done nothing. And it's just not really interesting to me. I suspect it's probably most interesting at solo play when, of course, you have full, control over everything that happens. Of course, then you're sort of losing out on that experience with maybe your family. Obviously, you've got to decide what would work best for you. But it has been a really neat experience. It was kind of funny because at first I told my daughter, I said, well, yeah, this is a cooperative game. We're going to work together and build this village. And she was like, I like fighting. I like attacking my parents. So she was a little bummed about that at first, but she has gotten into it. And I'm trying to just keep playing. I'm trying to hurry up and get through it before we get distracted, lose interest, whatever else. So a very interesting experience. I think, again, one that can kind of go a couple of different ways. Depending on your experience, people that you're playing with, you may find that it's just too boring for you. Again, there is no objective to this. I think there's going to be something about sort of points at the end of the game. And my guess is, and I'm only guessing, that it's going to be one of those, well, if you have X number of points, then you did great. Otherwise, you did okay. Otherwise, you maybe need to try harder next time. And for a lot of people, that's kind of unfulfilling. And I can understand that. I don't know if that is how it's going to end. I want to make that very clear. I am guessing based on what we've seen so far. But like I said, there's like little puzzles in here, almost like escape room game, kind of, a little bit. And that has been really surprising for me to see. And so, yeah, it's an interesting experience. Cozy Stickerville. All right. I have quite the mess down here on the floor. But hey, let's get to question of the week for next week. What I want to know is how much box damage is too much box damage. Have you ever found yourself wanting to return the game because it's just a little too beat up for your own tastes? Curious to see your thoughts on that one. Tune in to the next episode where I will talk about the new fortunes of Scoundrel Bay and, of course, a bit more. I'll talk to you then, folks. Thanks as always for checking in. Cheers.